Very first question is evaluate negative x squared for x equals -3. So first, we just need to remember that we are going to substitute -3. And if you don't use parentheses, you are actually taking a big risk. You can make a mistake. Negative comes from the question, and instead of x, I'm going to use -3 and then squared. Now, exponent first. Let's get solve this problem first. -3 squared means -3 times -3. -3 times -3. We know that negative times negative is positive. It is 9, right? This is 9, but there is negative here. It comes from the problem. -9 is my answer. X is -2, y is -3, and then negative comes from question. For x, I'm going to use -2, and I'm going to square that, plus negative comes from the question. For y, I'm going to use -3, and then I'm going to square that. What is -2 squared? -2 squared is -2 times -2, which is +4. This negative comes from question, and -2 squared was +4. And a negative is going to be positive, and 3 squared is going to be 3 times 3, which is 9. This is +3, and 3 squared is +9. -4 plus 9 is +5. Hopefully you are pausing video very frequently and trying yourself first, and then watching Mr. Oscar. X is 16. We need to evaluate this. It's going to be basic substitution. I'm going to plug it in here. Negative comes from the question. X is 16. -2 divided by 3 plus x is 16 divided by 4. -16, -2 is -18 divided by 3 plus 16 divided by 4 is 4. -18 divided by 3 is -6 plus 4 is -2. X is -5 and y is 3. Negative comes from question. X is -5 minus y is 3 squared plus 3. -5, -3 is -8. I need to square that. -8 times -8 is +64. But there is negative here that comes from question. Negative here, it comes from here. -8 squared is 64 plus 3. -64 plus 3 is -61 is the answer. Absolute value examples. Absolute value, x is -1 minus y is -2. Close the absolute value, plus y is -2 minus x is -1, and then minus x is -1. Now, just like parentheses, we need to work in our absolute values. Absolute value, -1 minus is going to be +2 plus -2. This minus is going to be +1, and this can, again, two negatives is going to be +1. -1 plus 2 is 1 plus absolute value -1 plus 1 is -1 plus 1. Absolute value of 1 is 1. Absolute value of -1 is also 1 plus 1. The answer is 3. X is -1, y is -3. -1 cubed, negative, y is -3 squared, negative, x is -1 plus y is -3. Observe that I'm always using parentheses. -1 cubed is interesting. Let's talk about it here. -1 times -1 times -1. -1 times -1 is +1. +1 times -1 is -1. So minus, and we know that -3 squared is -3 times -3, which is 9. And then when you see two negatives, we all know that it is +1, right? And then plus -3. So -1, -9 is actually -10, right? And then +1 plus -3. This is -9 plus -3 is -12. There are different ways to solve this problem too. Maybe your way is different, but if your answer is -12, I'm happy. X is -1, 1 over -1 plus y is -5. All right, and minus absolute value, x is -1. All right, so 1 divided by -1 is -1, and plus -5 minus absolute value of -1 is 1. So -1, -6, -7 is my answer. X is 3, y is 2. If x is 3 times y is 2 minus x is 3 squared minus y is 2. If your numbers are positive, I mean, you don't need to use parentheses. They are mostly obvious. Y is 2 minus 1. So 3 times 2 is 6. -3 squared is 9. 3 times 3 is 9. -2 divided by 2 minus 1 is 1. 6 minus 9 is -3. -3, -2 is going to be -5. Divided by 1 is -5 is the answer. X, Y, Z. That means x times y times z. X is -1. Y is -2. Z is -3. Minus xy. X is -1. Y is -2. Minus z. Negative times negative is going to be positive. Positive times negative is going to be negative. So 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. -6. Again, -1 times -2 is positive 2, but you have negative here. That was it is -2. Negative is going to be positive 3. -2 minus 2 is -8 plus 3. -8 plus 3 is -5. Negative x is 1, y is 2 squared. Negative y is 2, x is 1 cubed. All right. Negative 1 minus 2 is -1 squared minus 2 minus 1 is 1 cubed. -1 times itself is +1. So negative comes from the question, +1 here. Minus 1 cubed is 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1. -1 minus 1 is -2. X plus y over x minus y. So x is -2, y is -1 divided by x is -2 minus y is -1 minus absolute value x is -2 plus y is -1. Close the absolute value. All right. First, let's start from the numerator. -2 plus -1 is here -3 over -2 plus is going to be negative is going to be plus. -2 plus 1 is -1 minus absolute value. -2 plus -1 is -3. So -3 divided by -1 is +3 because negative divided by negative is positive, minus absolute value of -3 is +3. 3 minus 3 is 0. Our answer is 0. X is -3. I'm going to square that. -3 times x times y minus y squared, 1 squared, divided by absolute value. X is -3 minus 2 times y is 1. Close the absolute value. Here, -3 squared is -3 times -3, which is +9. And -3 times -3 is going to be +9. And then -1 squared is -1 divided by negative 3 minus 2. Negative 3 minus 2 is negative 5, absolute value of negative 5. So I have 9 plus 9 is 18, minus 1 is 17. Absolute value of negative 5 is 5. The answer is 17 over 5, or 3.4 in decimal. X is negative 2. 20 divided by absolute value of negative 2 minus 20 divided by negative absolute value of negative 2 plus 20 divided by negative 2 squared. First, let's address this. We know that absolute value of negative 2 is here. This is positive 2. And we know that absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2, but you have negative here. That's why it's going to be negative 2, right? And then negative 2 squared is positive 4, but you have negative from here. That's why it's going to be negative 4 here. 20 divided by 2 is 10. Negative 20 divided by negative 2. Again, this negative comes from the question. I just already put it down here. 20 divided by negative 2 is going to be negative 10. 20 divided by negative 4 is negative plus minus 5. So 10 plus 10 is 20, plus negative 5 is 15. Thank you.